Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we got, as always, we've got plenty to talk about. We're going to talk about what makes a nation, a country, a civilization stable, and what happens when those things are no longer present. Let's talk. Hello, all. It's Sunday. I know a lot of people are watching George Galloway, and they should be. I just had a little bit of time to do a video, and I wanted to get in here and run off the mouth. So everybody's watching George Galloway. Continue to watch it. It's critical. Very important that we support everyone out here that's doing good work. Watch Galloway stuff afterwards, and if you get a chance, when it's all said and done, share this on all your social media platforms. A couple of things I do want to bring to people's attention. Let me show you something before we really get into it. And my numbers are down, right? My numbers are way down. 50% in some, 50% down in some ways. And let me show you something from YouTube. But why? Why, you ask? Why are Garland's numbers down? Let's look at this. Lower, far lower than usual. 310,000 views as opposed to, I was at 550. They're saying 487,000, 550,000 views, right? But look at why. Why are my views down significantly on YouTube, right? There are a few reasons for this decrease. One, viewers watch your content 33% less often than usual from recommendations from YouTube. There's another one. Subscribers chose to watch your content 25% less often than usual after seeing them in their subscriptions feed or notification. So that's recommendations. Why are my numbers down? Number one, recommendations from YouTube. Number two, because they're not seeing in their subscription feed or notifications. YouTube's analytics are right there. I know they didn't even think about it. You know, the fact that they're putting it right out there. If anybody wants to know why in the world their numbers are down or what's going on, all they got to do is YouTube analytics, and they tell you it's not because of my content. I'm not putting out this or blah, blah, blah. It is YouTube is notifying people less. It's recommending my videos less. And it is, they're not seeing them in their subscriptions and news feeds. So that's where we are, ladies and germs, as comedians used to say. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we are today. That's what YouTube's doing. I could say that's a terrible thing, but I can say it's a good thing. If, in fact, I was doing videos saying, oh, boy, the U.S. empire is doing a great job. Putin's evil. Zionism is wonderful and things like that. Well, it'd be the opposite. I'd be getting 25% and 33% more. So if you're doing the right thing, do the right thing. If you're saying what you believe, say what you believe. And whatever happens, if I get one view, I happen to feel that if I continue to do what I'm doing, that there's people out there that will enjoy watching this, maybe learn something from it. How about the great guests I have and the great interviews that people will enjoy it? I'll enjoy it. And hey, it is what it is. So let's get moving. One of the things I think you have to talk about when you're looking at the U.S. empire, the collapse. I mean, let's face it. I'm not saying something that's a secret. I'm not like, hey, the U.S. empire is collapsing, and people are like, really? Gee, I didn't see that coming, right? I can say this. Let me give you a couple of things that I can see with my own eyes. Okay. So just two quick things. Oh boy, I'm gonna kick the table. Two quick things that I can see I'm getting comfortable see with my own eyes, just to let you know, things that have stuck out to me that I'd be like, wow, that's different. So I started in the 80s with, the police department. People that I worked for was Maryland Natural Resources Police, NRP, DNR Police, blah, blah, blah. And I'll give you the background on it. In the state of Maryland, there were two, but this is all going to go somewhere. In the state of Maryland, there were two police agencies. There were two, Department of Natural Resources had two enforcement agencies, three actually. One was called Maryland Game Wardens. One was called Maryland Marine Police, which were the police boats, a lot of activity on the bay. And the third was called Maryland Tidewater Fisheries. They were the ones who dealt with commercial fishing, commercial harvesting of, wildlife, things of that nature, right? 1972, the state of Maryland decided we're going to put those together under the Department of Natural Resources, and we're going to call it the Maryland Natural Resources Police. We will give them the same authority as the state police, and they'll be able to do some of the same things, and there'll be a police department, but their main focus will be on those things. And my main focus, for the most part, were police boats, law enforcement on the bay, search and rescue, work with the Coast Guard, things of that nature. So law enforcement, search and rescue. And then, of course, we did have all the traditional things like we had helicopters, aviation section, we had training divisions, we had an investigations division. So it was a regular police department. But the focus that I worked on for the most part was on the bay, right? Everything from drug interdiction, which we didn't do a lot of. That with the Coast Guard. We didn't really do much of that if the Coast Guard called us. But you'd have boat accidents. Somebody be, just like car accidents, boat accidents, if you think of that, because the boating was so heavy, we had to deal with the investigations, charges, things of that nature, all that kinds of stuff, right? Okay, here's where I'm getting at. Going somewhere with this. When I started in the 80s, I was a young, dude. There was boats everywhere in the bay, man. Are you kidding me? Annapolis to Baltimore, you could walk across. There was boats everywhere. You go down to the marinas and to the Sandy Point State Park next to the Bay Bridge, right? There was people going down. And what did you see? Families all over the place, people with 2 and 3 kids. Inexpensive boats. You could buy boats fairly cheap. Gas was fairly cheap. And so all of these people were out everywhere. Don't let it be a holiday or fish are biting when the summer's, and there was just people out everywhere, all over the place, all ages, friggin' boats everywhere. And I could see that with my own eyes. That's two things. Number one. Number two, the other thing that I saw was people who worked at different places, right? And, for the most part, if you went into a fast food restaurant, it was all teenagers. When I was in high school, I worked in a fast food restaurant called Geno's, McDonald's, etc. They were all teenagers. They were high school kids starting at, for minimum wage. That was the way it was. Jobs like that, if there was a gas station, things like that, there were kids. I had friends of mine in high school that worked at gas stations, worked all those kind of jobs were kids only. Why? Because the grown-ups they worked in a factory. They had decent jobs with pensions, retirements, etc. Right. My dad was a longshoreman, and he had buddies. His one buddy a lot of people worked at the steel mill. There was a steel mill. He had a buddy, Joe, who worked at a SK sausage. The guy worked on a line stuffing sausages, literally, right? The guy made a decent living. He had like a middle-class home. His wife didn't work. He had a retirement. He retired and had a retirement, right? All of these things. He had a decent car. He used to go fishing with me and my dad a lot. He was one of my dad's fishing buddies, right? Those guys hunted. They went rabbit hunting and stuff like that. They were regular old guys, right? And that was the vision I had of America at that point in the 80s. And I saw that change to a point where we are now. Man, you go down, I still do a lot of fishing and boating, right? Man, you go down to Sandy Point, there ain't no boats there. You go down there on, 4th of July weekend, there was so many boats. It was unreal the whole time. You had kids. You had people that lived on the water that had 16 and 17-year-old sons who were out of school for the summer, and they bought their kids a boat, and their kid was piddling around, fishing and crabbing. Everybody, boats were everywhere on the Chesapeake Bay, right? I grew up right here on the bay. That was normal. Now, man, there ain't nothing going on out there on the bay. There's nothing going on out there. There's a few boats here and there. Why is that? Because people can't afford it. People can't afford boats. People can't afford gases. Those are luxuries. People could afford luxuries then. And I see that with my own eyes as imperial collapse. The normal, what had become a normal lifestyle for people was to have some extra money for fun stuff like boating, fishing, things like that. People ain't got that. They're just trying to survive. The other thing that I noticed too that stuck out for me, it really stuck out, was I started seeing old people working for McDonald's and in jobs that traditionally you never saw old people work in, right? You didn't see that. And it was like, what the hell's going on? How there's an old person working at McDonald's? I never saw that. And more and more and more. And so the traditional jobs, the good jobs, working in factories or wherever the hell that grown-ups, as I saw them, worked, it became that the kids' jobs were now grown-ups working in the kids' jobs for next to nothing. And of course, let's face it, you can't afford a boat and to take your family fishing if you're working at frickin' McDonald's. And I noticed I started seeing seniors because they couldn't live off of the pensions that they had. They couldn't live, when I say pension, Social Security, etc. I started seeing seniors, 70, 80 years old, working at fast food. What the hell is that? That was the decay of neoliberalism. That was the decay, which means that now the jobs, the economic system can no longer provide a stable base of income for the working class. And now the jobs that were traditionally reserved for people who, teenagers, etc., people who just, when I was, let's be honest, when I started off, what did you need a few dollars for? I lived at home. I had a car. I lived at home when I was a teenager. That was for fun stuff. That was for buying some shoes or something, or fun stuff. That was for, doing things with your friends and have a few dollars in your pocket. You didn't need that much, right? That was what that was for. It was not for survival. It was not for putting a roof over your head, working in fast food. And I saw that gradual, actually, if you think about it, from the 80s, 90s to today, that's not gradual. In the course of history, in the context of history, that's an extremely fast deterioration over the of an economic system, to a point where here we are now, and this is what I'm getting into. Here we are now at a completely different place than we were 44 years ago in 1980. A completely different place. We're now in a place with where people are struggling to make ends meet. And of course, that means they got to ask questions. That means you still have people alive like me, right? Particularly people like me who were very young when that happened. So we ain't over the hill. I may be over the hill. I don't know. Depends on what you call over the hill, right? But whatever. But I'm still young enough, if that's the right, I don't know if you ever want to apply the word young to me, but I'll use it in this context. Young enough to have a very clear memory of growing up in a society where, opportunity was there. I remember kids when I got out of high school, kids who went and got a job. Literally, they got out of high school. That summer, they went and got a job. You saw them the next year. They had a new car. My one buddy, Charles, he got a new Camaro, good looking car, powdered blue. Man, that was sweet, right? He's 19 years old. He goes out and gets a job. He just graduated from high school. He didn't have a degree. He had a new Camaro and he had an apartment. 19 years old. And let me tell you something. That wasn't out of the ordinary. That wasn't something that you never saw. If you wanted to do that, you could do that. There were some jobs out there. You could make a few dollars, but the price of the Camaro wasn't but so high. And the price of the, what was a Camaro then? $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 maybe. Okay. The price of a apartment was, for monthly price, wasn't all that high. So you could make enough to do that. So that was the world that we live in. That was the world that people were accustomed to. Okay. And guess what else you could do then? You could save a few dollars. You could meet a young lady. You could get married. You could have some kids. You could maybe decide, oh, I think I want to be a plumber. And you could start in plumbing and you could become a journeyman and all that. And you could maybe, by the time you're 30, you got a little bit more experience and you make a few more dollars. Now you can buy a home and you got a wife and 2.4 kids and a minivan, and all that was a reality. Okay, we could go into why. We could talk about the fact that the U.S. was going around the world pillaging and plundering other countries, and that was one of the things that was creating the appearance of stability at home. That's a different question. But what I'm talking about now is where the empire is was then and where it is now. Because in order to talk about free fall, you got to start out, you got to start somewhere to fall. You got to give people a context. And some people may not have grown up in America. Some people may not have grown up that long ago. Others may have grown up long before it, right? But the fact of the matter was, for all the evil machinations the empire was doing back then, they still had a strong economic base and a stable economic base. Now, to be quite frank, had the US empire decided back then that instead of spending all of that money on the Vietnam War and all these other things and going off the gold standard, you name it, blah, 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 the economy could have been even far more stable. But whatever the case, far more attractive to people. But it is what it is. That's what we had. And now, what do we have? The area that I lived in, Glen Burnie, Pasadena, Maryland, working class, people had a job. You like homelessness. I didn't even know the meaning of the word. It didn't exist, right? Didn't exist. And now I know areas I can go in the local areas and routinely see homeless people wandering around looking, depressed and forlorn and with their hands out, I can drive up to the 7-Eleven not far from me, which is a little convenience store, and it's not unusual for somebody to be standing outside. You get out, you go to walk in and grab a bag of chips, and there's some guy standing there, and you walk out, how you doing? And he says something nice. Oh, how you doing? Oh, great. Oh, great. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. When you come back out, he says, just wondering if you could spare $1 or $2. Right? That person's homeless, struggling. Now, I'm not going to lie. Could be addiction problems, could be other diseases of despair. But that's what we're dealing with. We didn't have those. You didn't see that then. And now where are we? We're at an economic position. We're in an economic position where the economy's ability to provide a stable way of life for the citizens has decayed to a point where now the citizens are starting to ask why. They're starting to look around. Now, one of the things that means is that the system has to double, triple, and quadruple down on the propaganda, right? So now that the system obviously and clearly does not provide a stable opportunity for people to grow and to feed their families and to flourish, and still wants to maintain the infamous American dream, where if you work hard enough, everybody can get can accomplish whatever they want, blah, blah, blah. Since you don't have that now, so what you have to have is more propaganda. You got to double down on the lies, triple down, quadruple down on the lies. So when a lot of people look at the news now and they're like, my God, this is obscene. The level of propaganda that we have is insane. It is because of the contradiction that people live. People that maybe haven't never studied contradictions of whatever, contradictions of society, cultural contradictions, contradictions of capitalism. They may not know technically about these contradictions, but intuitively they feel the contradictions. They understand, wow, I'm working hard and I'm getting nowhere. But then they look around and they see their government spending unthinkable amounts of money on what their government wants to spend money on, and they see intuitively they feel the contradiction of democracy. See, that's the big one. Of all of the contradictions that we can discuss about the free fall of the U.S. empire, right? We could talk about, all of the money that they've got and the ability to print money and the money coming in and all of these things, and people wondering why there's all of this money. Why am I living in a sea of wealth? And there's islands of wealth and a sea of poverty, right? Martin Luther King once said that Black people were on an island of poverty in a sea of wealth. Well, now we are all on an island in a sea of poverty, and there's an island of wealth. And one of the issues that immediately presents itself to people who live inside the empire, and this goes for the people, particularly of the Europeans now, is the contradiction of being told that you live in a democracy, because we understand what a democracy is supposed to mean. That it's supposed to mean, if you go into when I'll forget the technical description of democracy, I'm going to simplify this. It means the government responds to the needs of the people. That's it. That's democracy. I mean, in its simplest form, right? But I'll go one further. It doesn't even have to be a democracy. People don't necessarily want democracy or not want democracy. People don't necessarily want a any however you whatever you name a monarchy, whatever kind of system you name. It's not what people want in the system. Here's the important thing. It's the outcome people are interested in. What if you lived in a monarchy and there was a king and there was a royal family? Not that this could happen because of the inclinations of people in Western society, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, you live in a monarchy, and the king was a pretty good guy, and the royal family loved the people. And they did everything they could to make sure things were shared equally. And they set up everything so justice and people had a good job. And guess what? All of a sudden, 5 years from now, I went down to Sandy Point State Park at the Bay Bridge, and there were all these people backing down with their little old 16-foot boats. Not everybody back then had some Miami Vice boat. A lot of people had a 16, 18-footer with a little walk-through windshield and an 80 horsepower, 70 horsepower, 85 horsepower Evan Rude outboard on the back. They had enough that some people had nicer engines, but they had enough that they could, get out there and putt around. Hey, let's take the kids crabbing this week, honey. Yeah, let's go crabbing. All these people were crabbing around the bridge and catching white perch and panfish and, taking them home and frying them, right? Well, imagine if the king maintained an economic system wherein people got that again, where we got a king, the king of America, Garland. And King Garland said, effective immediately, we're doing away with neoliberalism, whatever the case, you get the point. And people got the outcome they wanted. And it was like, people were like, hey, I'm afraid they're looking into my, computer and my phone and everything. And King Garland said, here's what we're doing. Here's a decree effective immediately. I'm stamping it with my ring. The government is not allowed to break into your phone, spy on you, blah, 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 blah. And it happened. And then people began to recognize that they were getting an outcome that they wanted. Do you think they'd say, we want to go back to this other system? Freedom of speech. And I said, look, King Garland said the government's no longer allowed to break into your freedom of speech, to prohibit you from saying the things you want, and blah, blah, blah. And then the courts are going to work this way. And they worked, and you had the outcomes that you wanted. Ultimately, when people said, hey, we want to go back to the government we had before, you know what people would say? I kind of like it this way. I got freedom of speech. The government ain't breaking into my phone. I can say what I want on social media. Good jobs are back, and we got pensions, and everybody has health care. And hey, you know what? This ain't bad. The government's not, forcing me to do things I don't want to do. And I'm not afraid that's every other week some new genetically engineered microbe is going to be, coming out of Fort Detrick. Blah, blah, blah. Hey, what do you know? This ain't bad. What would happen? Here's the truth. I don't know about you, but I'd be like, hey, I'm for the new monarch we got here, right? Why is that? Because people want outcomes. That's what they want. They want their lives to be better. Ultimately, every 4 years when they vote, they ain't voting on foreign policy and all that stuff, unless foreign policy is making their lives worse. So when people now vote and they're like, hey, let's say they vote for Trump because they're unhappy with whatever war. I'm not saying Trump, good, bad, or this is not a discussion about that. I'm upset because, and you got people saying this, 95 billion, 150, 200 billion dollars have gone into the Ukraine and into the war efforts. And my community's fallen apart and we don't have health care and things like that, right? What they are doing, they're not voting foreign policy. It appears to be foreign policy, but what they're voting on is foreign policy is hurting me on a day-to-day basis. It's hurting my family. We're not getting what we want. So in a way, in an abstract way, in an indirect way, they're voting for foreign policy, but not really. Because ultimately it comes down to it. People are looking at their lives, and people are looking around the United States and saying the jobs ain't what they used to be. They're gone. Good jobs, gone. And I can't have the leisurely things that I used to afford that because of the type of jobs that I had and the type of opportunities I had. So I can't have the snowmobile or take the vacation or have a boat or a dirt bike, all these things that you used to see everywhere. You know what you can do? You can stay in a house and you can swipe left or swipe right. See, that's all they really want you to do. They want you to stay in the house. They want you to be online. They want you to be on whatever, and they want you to swipe left or swipe right, stay in the house, shut up, do what you're told. And want you driving all over the place, because then you're going to say, well, wow, I see things I want to do, but I can't afford it. Nope, stay in the house. They want you to have the illusion online that you have a life. They want you to go on Facebook or whatever and create a fake persona. You know the type on Facebook where she has all the filters that make herself look beautiful. She has the fake parts of her body that make herself look like she was born, to Marilyn Monroe or Shaka Khan Part 2 with all of the perfect curves, right? She's got the nose job. She's got all of those things done. And she's pictures with all kinds of stuff and filters all in the background to make it appear as though she's wealthy and happy and what have you. And she's freaking miserable. And that's why she has to create that fake persona, because that's all she has. All she has is that thing that you're looking on Facebook, that fake persona. That's where they want you to be now. That's what they want you to do. The picture of your food. Hey, look at this. I'm having dinner. Show you the picture of your food, because they want you to now be on sitting home where they can send you advertisements to get you to buy things you don't need. And you can have nothing in the real world. When I go on, you can have a game to fish. You can have an online game where you pretend to fish, but you can't afford a fishing rod and a small boat and some bait where you can go out and actually go fishing and take your son fishing if you want. They want you to sit there with that game online. And meanwhile, that game is picking up your data and sending it to somebody else, selling it to someone else so they can send you something to buy. You're not allowed to fish. You're allowed to fake fish. And even that fake fishing, they're the ones doing the fishing. You, my friends, are that minnow that goes on the end of the hook that you throw over so a bass will grab it. Well, guess what? You're the minnow. You're the bait. And ultimately, you're the one that gets eaten. And that's where we are. And so I say all that to go here. So people now see and feel the contradictions between the illusion of democracy and the results of neoliberal totalitarianism. That's it. The illusion of democracy. Hey, you get to vote. What do they say? Think about this, about the two things that I just put together, right? The illusion of democracy and the outcomes of a system that works for the masses. The illusion of democracy, the illusion of privilege, right? They want you the illusion of privilege. Well, you've got a now. They don't try to anymore. They ain't going to say to you, "You're living better than the Russians and the Chinese." That dog don't hunt no more. You're living better than they are, and you look at it and you're like, why are they like building stuff and they got jobs and things like that and we don't? Why is it that their society is improving? Why is it that their economy is more stable? Why is it that people respect them more and respect us less? So if you're going to use this word democracy, what is the advantage that I get out of this so-called democracy? And you're telling other people they don't have a democracy because outcomes are at issue here. The outcomes I'm getting ain't all that great, right? So what do they do now? They can't say your standard of living is improving and theirs aren't, because that's gone. They can't say you're living better than they are, because you're not. They can't say you're anything. They can't give you anything that's happening, any advantages over these other countries. So what do they say? You've got freedom and liberty and they don't. That's it. They've got to now argue that you're getting something that's really undefinable. You're getting freedom and liberty. I'll never forget one time, you might have heard me tell the story again, forgive me. When I was still a Democrat, right, before I became an independent, and I was talking to this guy that was a conservative, and he was giving me the black people should become Republican stuff, right? And I was like, yeah, black people should do what everybody else is doing, get the hell out of both of these parties. And white people and red people and blue people and green people also, right? But he's giving me the black people should. And so needless to say, I went on this an intellectual adventure with him rather than just say, come on, dude, I'm starting. At that time I was getting fed up with the Democrats and saying, I'm going to become a independent. I decided, well, I'll run with this. Let me see what he says. So he's going on black people should become Republicans, blah blah blah. And I said, you know where I'm going with this, brother. WIIFM. Everybody listens to the same radio station. What's in it for me? When it comes to people and parties and whatever, what's in it for me? With some people, unfortunately, it's just a good feeling, a feeling of camaraderie. That's all they get, right? But tell me, you're going to go to the black people in the black community, whatever that really means, and say, hey, you should all join the Republican Party. And they say WIIFM. What's in it for me? And that's a reasonable question. If you go to any group of people and say you should take an action different than you're taking, the obvious question that any intelligent person is going to ask is, what's in it for me? You know what he said? Freedom, liberty. And I said, I don't even know what that means. I'll never forget. I was like, I don't even know what that means. In the context of what he was saying, hey, you're in one party, join this other party, you get freedom and liberty. Am I still going to be in the United States? Yeah. Well, how does being in one party give me freedom and liberty as opposed to being in the other party? If I'm in the US and if I am to believe the declarations of independence and that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are valid documents, which I don't believe, are documents that are practiced, which I don't believe. They're a fraud that the U.S. ruling elite wrote to make us believe that there would be rules that they would abide by. But if in fact those things are what you claim they are, what difference does it make at what party I'm in? I can be in no party. I can be a member of the Communist Party, according to someone who believes all that hooey about freedom and liberty. I'll still get the same freedom and liberty because I'm an American and I get freedom and liberty. But bottom line is this: foreign policy, he had nothing else to say. So he made something up, something that can't be evaluated. There's no standard by which I can say I've got more or less freedom or liberty in the United States, right? So ultimately, this is what I have to say. That's where we are. Yes, somebody when they're like China and Russia, and you're like, okay, well, why am I better off than the people in China? They don't have freedom, and I do. They don't have liberty, and I do. Yeah. Why? Because if you're not going to be like, they don't have decent jobs and health care, and their standard of living's not improving. And I'm going to say, we don't have any of those things either. So it's moved simply to, in the same way, right? It's moved simply to something that you cannot standardize, something that you cannot evaluate on any reasonable, scientific, empirical, but using any empirical standards. It's just you got freedom and liberty. I don't know what that means, and for some reason, doesn't seem like I have it. Maybe I'll call Julian Assange and ask him. Maybe he can evaluate freedom and liberty. Maybe I'll ask Stephen Donziger or Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning what they think about my freedom and liberty. Maybe they can evaluate the situation and give me a little bit better of an answer than you can, pal. Right? Bottom line. So the big contradiction is we have democracy, and democracy gives us freedom and liberty. Now, along with democracy, if in Europe, which is part of the U.S. empire, in order to have that so-called democracy and freedom and liberty and when I say imperialism, the U.S. empire, that includes its colonies, such as Europe, you've got to have sovereignty and independence. See, in order to have democracy, that means if you're in Germany or France or Italy, that means that you vote for your elected officials, and your elected officials look out. Number one, they're looking out for the good of Italy or France or Germany, whatever country it is. And inherent in that is they're looking out for Germany or France or whatever country the people voted for them. And they're looking out for the people in that country, right? That's what that means. That means that it is that France and Germany and Italy are individual countries, and that the people there choose their leaders, and their leaders then look out for their country nationally And as a result of looking out for their country, when they say they're looking out for their country, what they mean is the people of the country, the natural resources of the country, the system that holds the country together, the culture of the country, the all of the above, right? People expect that. People expect their culture to be preserved. They do. They expect their culture to be. It's not evil or racist to expect your culture to be preserved if you have a culture. Not bad or whatever, your religious culture you might be. Now, certainly there should be freedom for other religions and other cultures to be able to flourish within your society. You know, like you see the Russian Federation, they got all these different cultures and different peoples and all that kind of stuff. That's the way you want it to happen. But as a Russian or an American or a Frenchman, you want to be able to wear your berets and eat your friggin' baguettes without anybody pounding you over the head and telling you can't do that anymore, right? Nothing wrong with that. There's expectations that people have. So what's happening now is the contradictions between a system that no longer has individual nations, a system where the governments have been taken over by private interests. So what you have now is an ideology, and that ideology doesn't have a country. But the ideology does have a constituency, and the constituency of that ideology are the corporate masters, the ruling elite, right? So now what you have is you have a government in the US, in France, in Germany, in the UK, right? And the people there are saying, oh, think about this. It's not like the people in the US are saying individually, how come our government's not looking out for us? And how come they don't work for us? And how come our democracy as we understand it doesn't seem to work? But yet the people in France are saying, hey, it's fine over here. No, think about it. Why is it they're all asking the same question? Why is it that the people in the UK are looking at their government saying, hey, you're so busy trying to send money to Ukraine, trying to stand up against the people. You're fighting with the people. The majority of the people want a ceasefire in Gaza, and we got to get arrested for even saying that. It's illegal to say that in half of these countries anymore, right? So the people in all throughout the US empire, in the main wing of the empire and the main heart of the empire, which is the US mainland, but also in its colonies, are all asking the same question. Think about that. It's not like the people in the US, in the mainland here, are saying, wow, our government looks out for us and works for us. But the people outside the colonies are saying, well, why doesn't our government work for us? That would make sense, right? It would make sense, at least from an imperial perspective, because that would mean that the people, the governments of France and Germany, et cetera, work for the US government, and the US government's taking advantage of all of those. But that ain't even the case, because the people in France and Germany are not asking questions any different from the people in the US. The question is, why is it that my government doesn't work for me, doesn't represent me, doesn't try to give me the outcomes that I would expect a government that represents me would try? Right? One of the things that I've said, and I wrongly, an argument that I've made, something that I've pushed for a while, is that the governments of Europe, the various governments of vassal governments, they don't work for you, they work for Washington, D.C. Right? I've been pushing that. I now argue that I was wrong, that they all are doing their thing and working for Washington. That ain't exactly the case. That implies that Washington, D.C. is the head of the United States, is representing the United States, and they're using all you like an empire reaches out and grabs like the tentacles of an octopus. And let's say the octopus is out in the middle, and this is his tentacle. The tentacle goes out, grabs something, a piece of food, brings it back and shoves it in the mouth, right? The empire is the mouth of the octopus, the head of the octopus. And then so the tentacles go out to Africa, they go out to Latin America, they go out to Asia, they steal people's stuff, they bring it back, boom, and now the octopus enjoys it, right? That's what was happening before. They were stealing stuff, and the people in the United States and Europe was also part of that head of the octopus. You see the head of the octopus, the tentacles were going out to Africa, wherever, stealing their stuff. Okay. But now, all the stuff is being stolen from all over, including Europe. The octopus is now stealing stuff. The tentacles are now stealing stuff to Europe, but it's not bringing it back to the mainland. This is not the head of the octopus. This is not the body of the octopus that the tentacles are reaching out, bringing back food and putting it in the mouth. So you got to ask yourself this: if the octopus has tentacles and the tentacles go out and grab food and bring it back, where's the head? whereas the body of the octopus that's being fed, if you see this from a visual perspective, right? If you see the visual perspective, this is the body of the octopus in the center. These are the tentacles. They go out, they grab things, they bring it back to the body. They put it in the mouth, they hold on to it, right? Where is that head? See, that's the thing about it, because they ain't bringing it back to us. I'm in the United States. They're reaching out, but they ain't bringing it back to us. And now Europe has really become the food. They're munching on Europe too. They're feeding on Europe. Think about this: when it gets harder to find food, right? What will your body do if your body starts starving? Your body will start feeding off its own muscle tissue. It'll start using the body to survive as you begin to starve. Why do people get skinny? Because the body needs energy. For the energy is to keep the organs going. That's what you need to be alive. What will the body start doing? It will start feeding off muscle tissue. It's feeding off any fat you have. It'll start first feeding off of excess fat. Then it'll start feeding off of muscle tissue. It'll start feeding off of itself to survive, all the way down to the organs. So there's nothing left but the organs. Then it'll die, right? Okay. What's happening now? There was plenty of food out there, and the empire was taking it. Now, I don't know if you know what's going on in Africa, Latin America, but they're doing deals with Russia and China. So the empire now is feeding off of itself in that Europe. Europe was its muscle. Europe was its strength. It's feeding off of Europe, Australia, it's feeding off of Japan. It's feeding off of South Korea. It's starting to feed off of its own muscle tissue. Its strength was its imperial muscle, was its imperial vassals around it that did whatever the hell it said. But now it has to feed off of those as it dies, as it starves to death. It's feeding off of its own muscle tissue. Okay. And now you have the people inside the empire in Europe saying, what's going on here? We don't understand. We thought this was a democracy. So the contradiction between the rhetoric of a democracy, right? The rhetoric of a democracy is the people choose the government represents the people. And the output of a democracy, the people choose the government represents the people, the government makes sure that the people are fed and that they have money and they got good jobs, blah, 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 right? That's what you get. That's the output of a democracy. A democracy works, the government represents the people, and people are saying, we're doing this part here where we work in the so-called democracy, where we vote in the so-called democracy, and we expect that whatever happens on Capitol Hill, whatever happens at 10 Downing Street, on and on and on, right? Whatever happens there, that the outcome we'll have a stable life, and our children will have at least as good a life, but they'll have the opportunity for improvement. And now the truth is coming out. And that is that there is a international constituency. There is an economic, this international constituency, interestingly enough, is based on economic class. Based on economic class. It's the rich. It's the super, super rich. And they have created a system that simply extracts money from the working class and fills their pockets. That's what the system does. It works perfectly. If you think that we need to tweak the system, fix the system, get better managers, vote in different people, bring in different, well, then you're not understanding what's happening in the system. If you think the system is broken, we need to fix it, you don't understand the system. It ain't broken, it works. This is what the system's designed to do. This is what it makes. This is what it creates. This is what it was designed, how it was designed to work. When all these conservatives, so-called conservatives, were saying, we want tax breaks, they said, sure, we'll give you your tax breaks, plenty of tax breaks. And they gave us these gigantic tax breaks, but 90% of them went to the top 1%. They didn't stop to realize we're being had. All they got was, we're getting tax breaks. Yay! They didn't stop to look at the details of the tax breaks and the inevitable outcome of a regressive tax system that sends all the money to the upper, to a tiny group of powerful people. So now what happens? And why is this whole the democracy thing falling apart? Why is this whole imperialism thing collapsing? Because these very wealthy, tiny percentage of people don't have a country. They don't feel like I live in the United States or England or Germany, therefore the United States or England or Germany has to be stable. Mm-mm. They don't have a country. If you look at them, I looked the other day, Netanyahu's son, when like other people are dying in the in Gaza, his son's in Miami. Zelensky, he's got a place in Miami. Keep looking around at all these billionaires, and how many of them have a place in Miami? Have a place in California, a place in Arizona, a place in the French Riviera, the Alps, blah, 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 right? They don't care. They don't have a country that needs to stay healthy. They'll go to the Maldives. They'll go to the Virgin Islands. They'll go wherever. Doesn't matter to them. They can go somewhere. They don't need a stable country. If this one starts to become too unstable, they just go to another one that's stable. And whatever country they are in, here's what they know. The government throughout the US empire works for me. I'm not aligned with the US empire. I have no stake in the US empire. I just control the government because they got a lot of guns and nukes and they can force people to do other things and they can bring money to me. And so now that's where we are. So the US empire now has a problem that it has to address, which is the unaddressable problem. And that is at some point, the people's suffering becomes so great that the jig is up. That the idea, the concept of democracy is no longer a reality to them. That the people in Europe are just getting there. I mean, think about this. You're in the UK. Oh boy, we're going to vote out the Tories and bring in Keir Starmer. We just slammed into the iceberg. What are you going to do? Put her in full reverse, sir. All right. She's in full reverse. Now what? Let's go forward and slam right back into that iceberg a second time because we didn't hit it hard enough the first time. Trump and Biden. Really? We got 4 years of Trump. We got 4 years of Biden. Now, don't get me wrong. If we're honest with ourselves, the 4 years of Biden are far worse than the 4 years of Trump. But I think part of it is this. There's a deterioration. And with Biden in charge, the deterioration got sped up a little bit. But the bottom line is, it's not like Trump can come in and reverse the rot, that he can slow up the rot or slow up the deterioration, or that he has even an inclination to. Trump is not an intellectual guy. He's not a smart guy. So he's going to go in with some hard, tough guy, with the right-wing strongman rhetoric. If it was me, everybody would stand up to me. He's Mr. Super Imperialist. Why, if I was in charge, my cape would be flying behind me and everybody would shut up. America would be strong again. Think about this, imperialism. The Russians wouldn't have done that. Why? Because they'd have been afraid. Hamas wouldn't have done that. Why? Because they'd have been scared of us. What about China? Everybody would be afraid of us if I was in charge. Basically, he's like going to make America great again. And you know what the great he's going to make us? 1992. We're going to go back to where there was no peer competitors economically or militarily, and we were so powerful that all we had to do was stick our chest out and everybody would do what we told because they were afraid of us because they couldn't match our military or economic might. That's basically Trump's argument. Sorry, Donald Trump, that dog ain't hunting no more. It's over. And not only that, you've got your hands on a ship that's heading back towards that iceberg to hit it a second time even harder. And you know what? I don't know if you know anything about running boats or larger boats or what have you, right? You can put that ship's heading to that iceberg fast. You can throw it in full reverse. It ain't going to be enough. It's going to take a while to slow that mass. There's an equation. There is an equation that will demonstrate to you that when that ship's going forward, you ain't stopping it like that. It ain't happening. Full reverse on these on the props. She's going to go forward and it's going to slowly slow up. And then at some point, due to the prop spinning either right or left, it's going to start to pull backwards in one way. It's not even going to go backwards straight. The direction that the props are turning are going to make the shift start to go back on one side or go back the other. So as far as stopping that ship, sorry, Donald Trump, even if you desired to stop the ship, you couldn't. But what Donald Trump is really saying is, no, I will give you a different flavor of imperialism, one that works. In a nutshell, what he's saying is, I'm going to do a flavor of imperialism, if you think about this, where Garland is saying, look, The imperialism that we have means that the United States government works for this shadowy cabal of billionaires, of powerful people and powerful families that don't have a particular country that they have an allegiance to. What Donald Trump is saying, what I'm going to do is go back to a time when the government, when the imperialist government of the United States continued to do terrible and abuse things around the world, when it was powerful, but it had an allegiance here. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to get something out of the deal. That's what Donald Trump's saying. He's really saying this. Look, right now, we have a situation wherein the government goes out and does its thing around the world. You vote for these people, they go out and do their thing around the world, and you don't get anything out of the deal. And I don't really have a problem with the nasty things we're doing around the world. In fact, I'm all for it. The only thing I'm going to do is make sure you get your share of the loot. We're going to continue to loot the world, but you ain't getting your share. You know, a bunch of criminals, they rob a bank and they take out the money and they go back to their hideout. One for you, one for you, one for you. I am the guy who came up with the plan. I'm the guy who came up with the idea of robbing the bank, so I get the most. Here's $1 for you, $1 for you, $1 for me. I get two. $1 for you, $1 for you. I give everybody $1, but every time I go around a table and everybody involved gets their part, I get two. And you guys all agreed at the very beginning that I'm going to get more than everybody because I'm the leader of the gang. I came up with the plan. I put it together. We robbed the bank and I get the most. That was the agreement. We shook on it. Everybody walks away. When it's all said and done, you got 150,000, you got 150,000, you got 150,000 cash. I got 300,000 cash. That was agreement. But everybody's okay with that because that they knew what they were going to get. They got their expectation. Were they involved in criminal activity? They knew that when they started. But they knew, hey, this is what I want, right? Donald Trump saying, look, the U.S. ain't getting the 300,000. You ain't getting your share. The rich are getting their share. All these people are getting their share. Let's not talk about how we're getting the loot. Let's just talk about how the loot's being split up. Again, the same. What Donald Trump is doing, interestingly enough, is the same thing the faux, fake Bernie Sanders, AOC, Democratic Party left does in America, right? It's not about the morality of how we go out there and plunder and pillage the world. It's not about the morality of whether we keep our word, whether we lie, whether we do all these terrible things. The left in America, the fake, faux, socialist, democratic socialist, all of that, these terms and euphemisms they use, really works like this. The United States has a $2 trillion budget. I don't know what it is. I'm using that number at the end of the year. Let's not talk about how they got that 2 trillion. I know, and you know, that if we had that discussion, none of us would feel good. We couldn't face each other because of the immoralities that have been, done to get that 2 trillion. Forget that. Here's what we're going to do. We are the left in America, the real left. We are the democratic socialist, all that bull crap, right? What we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that the working class gets their share of the loot. Stolen loot, pillaged loot, evil things done. We'll talk about that. Let's make sure that the working class gets their share of the loot, right? That's what they do. You hear Bernie Sanders, he'll say, Maduro is evil, whoever, whatever they tell him the evil is evil. Putin is evil, Maduro is evil, Cuba is evil, blah, blah, Iran's evil. Whatever the imperial government, whatever his colonialist masters tell him to say, Bernie Sanders is going to bleed it. He's going to repeat it. When they give him a list of who the evil people are around the world, Bernie Sanders is going to repeat that list. Because how the money is stolen, he don't care. That ain't his job of the imperialist left. His job is to say to the people of the United States, look, I'm here to make sure that the working class gets something out of the deal. He's not even going to try to make sure you get your fair share. He's going to try to make sure that you get enough to keep your damn mouth shut. That if the top 1% is getting 90%, right, of it, which they're getting 99. Bernie Sanders is going to say, can you take 5% and split it up amongst the working class. And that way you can get 95% instead of 99. You can have 95% of the pillaged loot, and then the working class can get the other 5%. That's fair. We can do that. That's what Bernie will say. And you know what the elite ruling class will say? No, they got 1%. And right now we're trying to figure out how we can whittle that down to 0.5%. You're going the wrong direction, Bernie. You're trying to figure out how the working class can get more, and we're trying to figure out how you can get less. But we're all right with you, Bernie, because your job is to give them hope. Their job is to make them think that there is a left in the Democratic Party, that somewhere within this government, somewhere there's somebody who gives a damn about them. So you keep doing what you're doing, Bernie. You keep telling these people you're fighting for them. You keep telling them that they've got to vote for Biden so they can stop Trump, and that we've got to support the Democrats, and that the way for them to get what they want is to vote more Democrats into office. You put more Democrats in the office, the Democrats can get the House, but Biden came in. They got the House, they got the Senate, they got the White House, they got all of that. And when you don't do anything for your party, and your party says, what can we do? What you say to them is, we need to vote more Democrats in. Well, if we had more Democrats, we could get what you want. But you got both houses in the White House. Yeah, but we don't have a supermajority in both. Well, that ain't the way the system works. There's no guarantee you're going to get a supermajority, right? But you're supposed to find a way to look out for the people. Well, they don't. That ain't who they are. Excuse me. That's not what they do. And now we're at a place where the people are getting restive. The people have gone from denial. Nah, we're all right. We're just in a temporary downturn, right? We're in a recession. We're in a whatever, right? They've gone from that to, hey, we got some questions. How come things aren't turning around, right? We're in a temporary downturn. Okay, great. And then what did they say to us? By 2014, well, you're in good shape. What do you mean? We've recovered. And the people are like, but I don't feel a recovery. Shut up. We've recovered. And then people were like, well, I got a contradiction. I understand we had another downturn in 08. I understand things went to hell. Been through that before. But in the past, when you told me we had a recovery, I could see and feel and hear the recovery. Now you're telling me I don't have a recovery, but I got no context for that. Things are still getting worse for me. So now they had to deal with the contradiction between what they were being told and what they felt economically. Well, now we're in another phase, because they're really, the government has gone all out. The government's like, well, you know what? Who cares anymore? I mean, we had the illusion of democracy, the illusion of liberty and freedom and all that for as long as we could stomach it. But now Russia and China and other peer countries are on the rise, and we can't afford that illusion anymore. We did it as long as we could. We did what we could. We can't afford it anymore. Nah. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to chill out, and we'll take everything. And now the Europeans are like, I don't know if we're going to listen 100%. And now they showed who they are. They blew Nord Stream. They blew it. Hey, we're not sure. We can't afford anymore, Germany, to talk with you. Russia is rising too fast. We can't afford to have a discussion with you. Russia is rising too fast. Things are getting out of hand here. We're going to use we're going to do what we do in South America. We're going to do what we do in Africa and the Middle East. We're going to use pure, unadulterated brute force. You will do what we tell you, or we will take a pickaxe and stick it in your stinking skull. That's what they did to Germany. And the message was not to just to Germany. It was to France. It was to Italy. It was to all of them. It was to the leadership over there. You will do what we tell you. And if you don't, it's going to happen anyway. And there ain't nothing you can do about it, and you know it. They got problems, though. And that is that within the empire, there is still an element like me, like you, that are not willing to accept the propaganda. There's still an element that can figure them out, because we never trusted them in the first place. So they still have an element in that's working to not only figure out what's going on, but that we're not going to keep our mouths shut about it. That's why, as I said, I showed people at the very beginning, I'll show you one more time. I showed people at the very beginning. Look at my channel analytics for YouTube. There, right? When you talk about they've dramatically decreased, I've got 310,000 lower views less, basically 311,000 views less than I had last month. How do you drop 310,000 views? 28 days, you got 600,000 views. The next 28 days, you got 290,000 views. That doesn't make sense. I didn't do anything different. But look under it. Why? There are reasons. Here's the two reasons. Viewers watch your content 33% less often than usual from recommendations from YouTube. So YouTube ain't saying Garland Nixon out there anymore. Number two, subscribers chose to watch your content 25% less often than usual after seeing them in their subscriptions feed or notifications. So they're not recommending this channel, and people ain't seeing it in their subscriptions or notifications. So they cut it in half. But here's the bottom line. Do you think I'm going to stop doing it? And there's a lot of people that don't need to see it in their notifications. You know, I had Andre Martianoff and Scott Ritter on the other day, right? A lot of people want to hear what they have to say. That's up to around somewhere around 40,000 views. It probably should be 140,000, but they're doing everything they can to hide it. Explain to me my subscribers, right? Explain to me my subscribers. How I got at this around 290,000 views, right? And it looks like I got 457 subscribers. I was getting subscribers like crazy. And now, at one point, I was getting thousands of subscribers. And I've been hung up under 70,000 for I don't know how long. Let's see how many subscribers I got. Finally crossed 70,000. It must have taken me 6 months to get from 69,000 to 70,000. Which what does that mean? That means the reality is, what else are they doing? What they're doing is, and this is the easy one. This is what I'd do if I was them. I get 100 new subscribers. The machine, right, then looks at my channel and sees the oldest subscribers that aren't watching. I identify subscribers that aren't looking at the channel anymore, that haven't seen it, watched it in 6 months, right? So they won't know they're being unsubscribed. So every time you get 100 subscribers, I unsubscribe 100 subscribers that haven't seen it in a while, and I even this thing out. You know, I'm getting thousands, probably tens of thousands of subscribers every month. People are like, Garland, why don't you have 1 million subscribers? The truth of the matter is, I should, and I would have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but I don't, and I can't, because the US empire is in deep and serious trouble. And people like me and you, we point out the contradictions. We deal with the contradictions. And the contradictions are getting so obvious that the empire is in free fall and they don't know what to do. And the last thing I'll say is this. And one of the things that they're doing is they're going to war with the people who have the expectations that they'll have a democracy. That's what censorship is about. It's a war on you. You know, when they say we've got to stop Russian propaganda, we've got to stop RT, right? We've got to stop Sputnik, we've got to stop, turning my phone off here. We've got to stop what is it? Press TV. We've got to stop CGTN, right? What do they really mean? Why do they need to stop them? Who cares? If those channels were just on and they were playing all the time and nobody watched them, they wouldn't need to turn them off. They don't want to stop RT or CGTN, or they want you not to be able to watch those things. That's what the censorship is out. They turned it off. Why? Because it's Russian propaganda, blah, blah, blah. What they're saying then is the same people who are robbing you of democracy, who are robbing you of your economic opportunities, the same people who are taking advantage of you, who are abusing you, who are lying to you, who are cheating on you, who are doing everything terrible to you, that those people have the moral wherewithal to determine what's in your best interest. They can determine what you should see and shouldn't see. They're protecting you. That implies that they're acting in your best interest. We've got to stop Russian propaganda from getting into our society. Why? Because if people read this, they'll believe this, or they may think some of this stuff is true, and then they act, but it's not. So they'll be better off if they don't see it. That implies that they're looking out for our best interest. But none of us actually believe that. So I look at someone and that guy says, I'm going to stop you from watching that show. Why? Because it's not in your best interest. And I say, but I don't believe you're acting in my best interest. Well, I'm still going to stop you from seeing it and shut up. Or I'm going to throw you off of Facebook. I'm going to throw you off YouTube. I'm going to throw you off, you name it. I'm going to censor you. I'm going to do that. I'm going to use totalitarian, authoritarian measures to stop you from seeing what you want to see. Yes, you want to see it, but I don't want you to see it. Why? Because it's not in your best interest. Shouldn't I decide that? No, you shouldn't. Only I decided. Doesn't it come back to something that I always bring up, and that is whether or not we truly believe that the government is acting in our best interest. If the government says do something, take this medication, wear this, go here, watch this, don't watch that, whatever the government asks you to do or demands that you do, doesn't it come back when you make your decision? Doesn't it come back down to whether or not you believe the government's acting in your best interest? And doesn't that come down to whether or not you believe you're in a democracy and the government's acting on the behalf of the constituent voters, or you believe that you're in an oligarchy, an authoritarian oligarchy, where the government is acting on behalf of the oligarchs and using authoritarian measures and tactics to suppress your right, to suppress your ability to even know what they're doing, to understand, to research what they're doing, to figure out what they're doing. Here, the government tells us, I'm going around the world to spread democracy. You're going around the world to spread something that I don't have here, something that I'm fighting for at home, and you're fighting to suppress it here. How in the world are you going to spread democracy to other countries when you're trying to doing everything you can, and might I add, effectively have suppressed it here? The people in America, the ones that got half a brain, do not believe that they're living in a democracy, do not believe that their government is acting on their behalf. But our government is then saying, I'm going to other countries. Why? To make sure that the government acts on the behalf of the people. Well, let's start with Russia. 87% of the people voted for the president they have now. So at least 87% of the people believe that the government's acting on behalf of the people. Let's go to China. Over 90% of Chinese people have a positive view of their government. I don't want to hear anything about the Chinese government and liberty and freedom in China. That ain't my place. The people in China have a different culture. It is a collectivist culture. And that culture says, hey, this is the way we want to do things. You know, the Chinese government had a while back, they passed this law, and I don't know the exact numbers, but just to make the point, I'm going to make up some numbers. But basically the law was, and these numbers aren't correct, the children during school time can only play video games 3 hours a week, weeknights. I don't know exactly how many hours it was, but you get the point, right? The people over here like, oh my God, what totalitarian measures? How horrible. My kids, I decide how many hours per week my kids can watch video games. If it's 24 hours a day, 7 days, that should be up to me. You may be right. You may not be wrong. I'm not getting into that. You know what the Chinese people did? And I'm being, symbolic here. Standing ovation. Great. Excellent. Wonderful. That's better for our society. Our kids shouldn't be. See, why? They got to get different culture and a different mentality. You may not like it. I remember during the when COVID first hit, and the people here were like, we're shut down everything all the time, everywhere. And in Sweden, remember that? The Swiss said, nah, we ain't shutting nothing down. We're not doing anything. And the people here freaked out. Oh my God, all the Swedish people are going to die. And what did they say in Sweden? They said, we got a different culture here. And we're not saying we ain't all going to die. We're not saying we're all going to live. We don't know. We'll find out. But our culture is different. And this is what we want our government to do. And our government says, hey, no, we're not doing all the lockdown stuff like that. Eventually did a lot of crap that we probably wouldn't like. But at that point, my point was it was a different culture. And the people were happy with what they got, what they got as a result of public policies. There were a lot of people here that weren't thrilled with it. And in hindsight, a lot of people who were thrilled with it are starting to question some of the public policies now. But might I add, during COVID, what was the issue? You had people that had a fundamental trust for the government. And when the government made particular policies about COVID, you had people that trusted that the government were acting in their best interest. So they were more inclined and likely to accept and follow the policies of the government because they believed that the government was acting in their best interest. You had other people who didn't believe that the government was acting in their best interest, and they wanted to research it and they wanted to know why. And when the government said, do this, you had people that said, I don't trust the government. I want to know why you want me to do it. That was the difference. It wasn't that one group was good or one group was bad, one group was right or one group was wrong. It was they had a different cultural outlook of view of the government. One group said, I think the government's acting in a way that's in the best interest of all. And the other people, I'm being in the latter group, has no trust for our government whatsoever. Didn't believe then that the government was acting in our best interest. And they tended to be reticent to accept what the government said. Now, that being said, there could come a time when the government does do something in our best interest, and I still won't trust them. So the government could act in a way, that's what you get. The government could say, I'm going to do this because this will be more likely to save people. And they could mean that. And I still wouldn't trust them because they've created an environment where I don't have that trust anymore. And a lot of people don't. It is what it is. I'm not making judgments. I'm just telling you what we got as outcomes as a result of that. So now, I guess I ended up by saying this. I ended up like this, and that is that what we end up with, right, is that the more people now find out the truth about having the opposite of democracy, the more they find out that they're living in an authoritarian oligarchy, which is purely what it is, the more they find out that not only are they living in an authoritarian oligarchy, but that the base of that authoritarian oligarchy is not in Washington, D.C., it's not in the United States, it's not in the city of London, and it's not in anywhere in one spot, that it is now an ideology. And that ideology doesn't have a home base, doesn't have a home country, so it does not have a need to keep one particular country stable. And might I add, and that ideology has figured out that the future is in the global South, right? That the reality is, it's looking and it's saying, man, the world runs off of oil. That's the Middle East. The world runs off these natural resources that are in Africa. Those are the important places. And that oligarchy is now looking in that direction. And that oligarchy will now treat us with the same contempt that it's been treating the Middle East and Africa and Latin America. That it will now turn that contempt on us. Why? Because we have an expectation of a reasonable lifestyle, a reasonable economic foundation for our lifestyle, and we ain't getting it no more, and it's done. And that we're going to have to be struggling with that contradiction between being told we're privileged and being told we're living in a democracy and experiencing an authoritarian oligarchy. And as they turn towards the global South, and the global South starts to grow, and they end up, they're fighting against BRICS now. Yeah, sure. But they'll wake up one day and say, well, what do you think? The money's in BRICS. Great. Got some doggone bug bugging worrying me to death. For God's sake, nothing worse than a bug in your house that's flying around you. At any rate, so it gives them the need to suppress us. That's all it is. It gives them the need to shut our mouths, because that's what authoritarians do. And so here's what I need you to do. Number one, you see everything scrolling across the bottom, patreon.com, buy me a coffee, PayPal, you name it. Cash App. If you can afford to help the channel, it's highly appreciated. If you can afford to support the channel, don't forget I'm on rockfin.com, ROKFIN. Go there and become a member. It's perfectly free of charge. You can go to Rumble and become a member, perfectly free of charge. By the way, Rockfin doesn't have any advertisements. The way Rockfin stays on the air is that it allows subscribers at $14.99 a month. If you can afford to be a subscriber on Rockfin, I would appreciate it. If you can, who cares, right? Just become a member at no charge and become a member at Rumble, because let's face it, you see what they're doing on YouTube now. They could shut me down at any given day, and I'm still going to keep doing what I do on Rumble and Rockfin. If they shut me down, who cares? It is what it is. I believe that everybody will go there, but you need to be a member there just in case of that. And And I think that's the long and short of it. Thanks a lot, everybody. And most importantly, share this on all your social media platforms. Let me see something while we're here. You know what? Why don't I see we got a lot of super chats, and it's a Sunday afternoon, and the people with the super chats deserve to have their questions answered. Let's go. Newsom Kushner 24. Yeah, there you go, Sparky. Thank you, Monic Oh, that's interesting. Natalia says they don't reflect that I finish your videos unless I go back and finish it. Interesting. Yeah, well, look, do the best you can, and we all know what they're doing. Natalia, thank you very much, Natalia. We all know the game. We know what they're doing. But guess what? Garland's going to be here, and Garland's going to keep going. San Churalaxo, same up here, Garland. People selling their snowmobiles and way more more tired grannies working at Tim Hortons. Exactly. People see it. People see it. How about we go to Kat? Thanks a lot, Kat Ferguson. Wow, that's probably Catherine or Katharina. Sparky, people know something ain't right. You are correct. People intuitively know. They know it, man. And they know they get no democracy. How about we go with Vivian 1124? Please speak. U.S. closing visa centers to go to Russia. Sure, they don't want you to go to Russia. Then you go over there. What happens if you go over there? You look around and you say, I was told that this place is a disaster and it's falling apart, and it ain't. They don't want you to go there. Please. Can China survive sanctions from the West? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. It can. What China is doing is it's building its market in the global South. You see what's happening. China, Russia, North Korea, all of them, Africa, Latin America, they're building an anti-imperialist bloc. Did you know that Bolivia has signed a deal with Russia where Russia's going to help Bolivia mine lithium? Right. So why? So the thieves, the imperialist thieves, can't go in and steal it. More countries are going to say, China, Russia, I want you to help me mine this. I want you to help me do this. But what they're also really saying is, because I want your presence in my country and I want to make it hard for them to overthrow the government again. We want a presence in your country. And that's what you're going to see more and more of. More and more of these countries aligned as an anti-imperialist bloc. Sparky says, in the U.S. town, kids used to fix and customize their vehicles and cruise on the weekend. Yep. At least they learned about tools and machining, not anymore helpless kids growing to helpless adults. Oh, man, are you kidding me, man? We had cars, man. We had mag rims on our cars. We worked on our stuff. And before that, bicycles. Remember that? We had bicycles as kids that we worked on and customized bikes back then. Sparky, build a better world with bricks. There you go. Sparkster. Sparky is always on top of things. Vivian, I hear they may be replacing B before the election's true. It won't surprise me. BOB is supposed to be doing a debate. How the hell is that guy going to debate anybody? So it is possible that sticking Biden out there in the debate is to allow him to crash, that they can't get rid of Biden. They don't know how to get rid of Biden. So all they got to do is stick him out there, let him debate Trump. He smacks into a wall and he ends up mumbling. And everybody just says, well, we can't, he's got to go. This ain't gonna work. See you later. And then that's how to get rid of them. So that's a possibility. And the other possibility is that they're idiots, and which I think is even more likely. They're not smart enough. They don't know how to get out of this, and they're just bumbling and stumbling along. That they don't have a plan. All right, we're gonna keep going. Sparky says, not being well-read is Trump's Achilles heel. People with selfish agendas and warmongers surround Trump, and he doesn't know enough to argue with them. He's only as good as the last person he spoke with. Good point, Sparky. How about we go with Sparky says, it's important to get as many good people around Trump to offset the influence of the evil bastards who normally surround him in case he's elected, make Trump's lack of idealism an asset, but he doesn't know, and he's not going to pick the people around him just like before, and he ends up picking a bunch of CIA puppets because he didn't pick them. Because the people around him donate money to him, and then they say, well, we donated a lot of money. Can you pick our friend? What's his name? His name's Mike Pompeo. Oh, great, yeah. Crown Heights Brainiac says, if you ain't getting shadow banned, you ain't doing it right. Thank you for opening my eyes and increasing my understanding. Thank you, Crown Heights. Keep going. Evangelos Koutsias. That sounds very Greek. Thank you very much. I wonder if it is. How about we go with Vivian? FYI, system not allow post a Q or an HZ or IZL. A quote on HZ. I'm not sure what HZ or IZL is, but yeah, I know how to gameplay. We know what's happening. we're going to keep, we're going. Ooh, Quicksilver fan says, how do you think Russia will respond to the attack on Crimea as well as the Dagestan attack? Great episode, by the way. Thank you. Number one, they will not allow themselves to be, they will not allow themselves to deviate. They have a plan. Their plan is working. The West is always going to try to do things to get them to deviate from their plan, to get them to do something stupid, to get them to make a difference, because it's working. It's working. So they got a plan. It's working. Here's what I believe. Will they knock out some Ukrainian electricity or something like that? Go sign a new deal with Iran or somebody, what the hell, whatever. Yes. But what they're not going to do is they're not going to change their military tactics, because their military tactics are working. The desperation of the West is, let's try to do something to throw them off, to make them do something different. What do I think they'll do? That's what the West, that's what the imperialists, that's what the ruling elite wants. Hey, Russia's winning. Well, let's try something crazy. Let's throw a Hail Mary, and maybe that'll really screw them up. And then they'll do something stupid, and we can use that against them. No, they ain't. Maintain course and speed. Ain't that what we say on boats? Maintain course and speed. Oh, Miss Me With It says, Goldman Sachs coined BRICS in 2000. Oh, I don't know. Wow, interesting. Let's go with this. Cat Ferguson. Cat is short for Cat. Love you, Garland. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you very much, Cat. Love you too. Certainly appreciate that. And look, I even got a red heart from Cat. Let's keep going. My mother had a very close cousin. So my mother's cousin was named Garland. That's who I was named after. And he had a sister named Catherine, and her nickname was Cat, K-A-T. That's why I said Catherine, because my mother's cousin was named Catherine, and they all called her Cat. So that's why that was a historical reference to my lineage. Okay. Ibrahim says, Trump is a full-blown Zionist. Agreed. Surrounded by Kushner. Agreed. Pompeo. Agreed. But he is slightly less bloodthirsty and can do deals. All of those things, I'm going to tell you, Ibrahim, all of those things, you are 100% correct. You are on the money, Ibrahim. Couldn't have said it better myself. Let's take a look over at Rockfin. Oh, what's going on over there? I think you're being too nice, Garland. What we have now is straight out fascism. Oh, no, I agree. I'm 100% agree. I'm saying, but to me, fascism, when you talk about authoritarian oligarchy, you say fascism, it depends on how you're describing fascism. You know what I mean? You can say, I've got a mole or a blackhead on my arm. Ever since I was 9 years old, where is it? On my arm, probably can't see it. There's a little black spot right here, right? Boom, boom, boom. That is, depending on what you want to call it, it's a mole or a blackhead. People go like, hey, Garland, there's a bug on your arm. And I'll be like, nah, that's just a mole. I've had it since I was 9, right? Okay. Is it a mole or a blackhead? Yeah. So is it fascism? Is it an authoritarian oligarchy? Yeah. So I agree with you. Yes, that is an authoritarian oligarchy. All right. Thanks a lot. I don't see any other questions. So I think, what about maybe in Rumble? Is there somebody in Rumble? I don't know. I don't know how to look for my Rumble rants. So I'll figure that out next. Okay. Then thanks a lot. You all. Oh, maybe. Oh, wait a minute. I got an idea. I got an idea because people on Rumble are saying stuff, and they may need. Okay, let's look. All right. Jokers for You says, fight the power. Thanks a lot, Jokers for You. And that's it as far as Rumble. All right. I think that's it. I think we've gotten it all. Okay, one more look. Anything? Miss Me With It says, your thesis is correct. Just look up Goldman Sachs papers in 2008 about BRICS. Yep. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. Thanks, everybody on Rumble. Thanks, everybody on Rockfin. Don't forget, share this on. Thanks a lot, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms. Peace. I'm out.